when a lot of America is hurting or confused or really just wanting to do more, we need the arts now like never before. And so part of being on the council, first of all, I've just been 1 year and I'm learning. And so what I've learned is what an integral part of our lives the arts play. I mean, you think you know, and then you sit there on the council and you realize that it's a huge part of our economy. It's a huge part of the work that people are doing every day, whether it's suppliers or whether it's the entertainment spaces or the exhibit spaces. All of it is so important to Ohio. And I also learned, again, just really, very new in this work, but I'm also learning how Ohio is really seen as a leader in the arts, whether it's our art museum or in the funding that's been provided nationally. Ohio is known to be so important in this space. We're not Nashville music, but we still, we still have left a huge footprint, and we have a bigger one to show with our work and with all of our efforts and our dreams and hopes. And so part of what we do today is I hope that we can build confidence, whether you have a space you want to open up, or if you are someone who's an artisan or someone who works in this area. This is important, and we really need you now more than ever. So thank you for having me participate.
Absolutely. We have a lot of questions, of course, as you would imagine, sure, about reopening.
Sure.
Our artists and our cultural organizations, from our zoos to our parks to our museums and galleries, this has been a rough time economically for them, and trying to make sure that they can take care of their people and their staff. So sure, we have some questions around the reopening. Howard Parr from Akron Civic Theater, who I'm sure you know. I'm not going to let him talk because sometimes he gets really excited and just talks. It's because I don't know how. But Howard is asking, yesterday the release mentioned movie theaters, but not live theaters. I was wondering, with your work on reopening, what you're hearing about that.
So just a little background. Other than today, I almost never miss the governor's press conference or press release. And also through our offices, we are given not one, but 2 recaps of those every day. And in addition to that, some of you may not know this, but I sit on the Ohio House's Economic Recovery Task Force. And that was a task force which talked mostly about how to open small businesses and businesses, but we did cover and receive a lot of feedback from the art and entertainment community. So all that is to say, I know a lot of these answers, but I don't know all of them. So what I heard yesterday on the governor's announcement is, you're right. It's not going to be those exhibit halls for now. And I believe, so June 10th, we're opening up everything, not the exhibit halls, not the, certainly the fairs are still left out, and the amusement parks and water parks are left out of that. So what I have noticed about this pandemic is everything we're doing is the first time we're doing it, right? Mm-hmm. So please feel free to fact check the information I just provided to you, and really all information that you hear every day. Here's one example of a group of businesses that got lost in the shuffle when we started shutting things down, and then when we started reopening. Churches, they were never closed by the governor, and a lot of people didn't understand that. They made their own decisions about what they were going to do. So if you are out there right now and your specific entity wasn't mentioned, or you feel like maybe you weren't covered, I have a lawyer in the next room who regularly fields calls like, I thought we were open, now I think we're not open, what's the deal? So, I think people are trying to communicate the best they can, but it behooves each of you to go on, get the information you can about when you can open, and you want to be ahead of it. So I understand June 10th for the ones I listed, but I'm sure all of you have been waiting and wondering when your particular entities and situations might be open again. And so I want to encourage you to go to ohiocoronavirus.gov And also, if you forget all about that and you need to reach out to my office, it's fine to do that at rep35@ohiohouse.gov. You could also reach out to your individual representatives same way, because our staff, by the way, they're back at work effective June 1st. Anybody who was not working, who was working from home even, is back in the office.
Okay.
And they were always available to help you anyway. So I just want to put that out. I'm a long talker, sorry.
No, you're not. That's perfect. And I really appreciate the making sure that we're all fact checking in this time. I think
Yes.
we talked last week about the danger of misinformation in times like these.
Yes.
And so it's very important for all of us to be doing that. I wonder if you could share a little bit about how are the decision-making processes going in terms of what's reopening when, and what can this group do in terms of supporting you with information or resources. I did capture some. They were kind enough to provide things that they wanted you to know when they registered, and we'll allow them to do that in the survey as well. But what can we do to provide you resources so that you can make informed decisions?
So the first thing to know is, I very proudly say to people, I don't know what I don't know. So whenever you're working with a legislator, you could assume a number of things, but unless you've read it in their bio that they are an expert in your area, we're just not. And part of our job is we are required to be experts in huge amounts of information regularly. I'm lucky because I have the best legislative aide ever. And
you really do.
I really do.
Yes.
None of you are eligible to hire her. She's sticking with me as long as I can. I'm just kidding. You know, I believe in free employment. But the point of the matter is she's great. And she regularly takes in huge amounts of information and decides what I need to know when. One of the things about the Ohio legislature is literally, I don't even know right now, 2:14 on a Friday, what my work schedule is going to be like next week. You can have a lot of feelings about what I just said to you, but those are just facts. And so you need to know that's the environment I'm working in. And so while you guys might have well curated meetings and plans and schedules, 1 to 5 and 10-year plans and all that, not the legislature, not so much. And so our work is planful, but it's not under any kind of a timeline that you can imagine. And so all that is to say, I have my cell phone printed on my business cards for a reason, because if we are doing some legislation that matters to you, Lisa King, you're out there, this is true.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to be mad at you for texting me about some amendment that I could put in to make a difference for you where you are. It doesn't bother me, because if I can't deal with it at the moment, I just keep swiping, right? But if I can, and I didn't know about it because you were going to write a carefully worded email to send out to me next week, it's too late, because at the Ohio, in the Ohio General Assembly, things work very quickly. And so I hope I covered your area of your question, because once you know that about how the Ohio legislature works, it really doesn't always fit the model of how you're working, but we work for you, and you should know, and you should feel that you have access to us. And I'm just trying to give you a way to know about that access and to feel like we are accessible. I try to return phone calls. I try to get information. But if you're going to write, like I said, a carefully curated 6-page email, single spaced, and wonder why I don't know about this information, that would be the reason why. So keep doing what you're doing, keep advocating. Remember the different times when you want to use, whether it's that email, oh, so sorry, I meant to say whether it's my cell phone to text me something, or whether it's email, or whether it's actually a memo that goes out to maybe every legislator, or if we need to have a Zoom meeting, or one day, God help us all, an in-face meeting, right? Because different situations call for different things. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, thank you. And I'm proud of myself for learning how to unmute someone. So I thought maybe Lisa would want to say hi, since I just given her a free shout out.
Hi, Representative. It's so nice to see you. And
great.
Everybody that is listening, she is amazing with thank you so much for being so accessible. And, and I don't want to, so accessible makes it sound like not a great thing, but wonderfully accessible. How's that?
Oh, thank you.
Or-
Thank you for saying that. Again, you know, that part of our work, it's not just making laws and so on. It really should be, as a public servant, we really should be able to, you know, we should be available to you because you have important things you want us to know about our work. And, you know, this is your government. And so it should work better for you. And in any way I can do that, I always want to. Thank you. And great to talk to you, Lisa.
Great to talk to you too.
Thanks, Lisa. We have Pam Hickson Stevenson from the library who has a question for you, which I think you know.
Excellent.
All of
I
your
love the libraries.
Okay.
So
I know the library has been keeping me sane.
do you hear me? And in my entire life, and the libraries always have to hear this speech from me, and I know it's exhausting, but the libraries are so much more than a place with books. And I wish if the whole world knew that, they would really be using the libraries and understanding the huge value that they have in our lives. Big proponent of the libraries. Go.
Thank you. And I didn't even have to give you anything to say that. So thank you so much, Representative Galonski. It's wonderful to see you. And believe me, I know what a supporter you are. And I never get tired of hearing you say that either. So don't ever hesitate to say that again and again, because I love it. It's music to my
Thank you.
ears. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for doing this. I think that, and of course, thanks to Nicole for arranging this and facilitating and moderating and using technology. And we've been in lots of meetings where we joke about technology together. So anyway, I did want to express to you what I know all the other attendees of this Zoom conference would want to say, and I know you know this already, but arts and culture is so critically important to our state, to our state's economy, to the physical and mental well-being of our citizens. It is so critically important, and I am really almost indescribably proud to be involved with the arts and culture sector in Akron and Summit County. I think we have incredibly strong partnerships. We have terrific leadership from Nicole. We have fantastic support from our county executive. It's just really a wonderful, wonderful place to be. But for just a minute, I want to speak specifically to the issue of public libraries. And because there are 7 of them, and I actually just finished a video conference call with my colleagues at the other 6 libraries in Summit County, and I know I can speak on behalf of all of them when I say that our funding from the state, of course, is put into the public library fund, and because it is based on a percentage, our fortune rises and falls with the state. So when the economy is strong, we benefit. When the economy is weak, we suffer, just the way the state does. We've made cuts. You may remember seeing in the news back in April that we furloughed about 85% of our staff. Thankfully, because of the CARES Act, they've been, I think all but one of them have been held harmless. So that brought me a great deal of comfort, and our great partner in SummaCare allowed us to keep them on health insurance, so that those were all great benefits. But my point in speaking to the Public Library Fund is that when the time comes to make cuts, and I know that that is coming for the state of Ohio because the state simply cannot sustain the loss of revenue, I hope that you will freely and frankly forcefully remind your colleagues in the House that because we are at a percentage, we have already taken hits to our funding. And I would ask that there be no further cuts to the percentage that we currently receive. We still are not up to the 2.22% that is in law. We're at 1.7 now. We fought hard to get that up a little bit from 1.68, and we certainly don't want to take any steps backward. We're very cognizant and very understanding that we take our lumps with everybody else. We just don't want to be in a position of having to take more lumps. because ultimately it either means a cut in services or depending on the amount of funding, a potential increase in local funding. And of course, we know that's always the way it is. When the state cuts back on something on a local level, it's either translated into cuts at the local level or an increased ask at the local level. So I will stop talking now. I have so appreciated all of your support. And it's, as I said earlier, it's been great to see you. So I will stop, and I'm sure there are other people who want to say things to you as well. But thank you so much.
Thank you. And so if I can make a couple of comments, with regard to what Pam just said, that'd be okay, everybody?
Yes, I think absolutely.
Okay, super. So obviously we're in uncharted territory, and obviously I can't make any promises to you. But one of the things that I've discovered is there's more to, I'm going to call it budget management versus cutting. There's more to budget management than just cutting. And what I have noticed as a legislator is, first of all, we can move some things around. We can look at things differently. And because we've had some time to really delve into some of these issues, I can now safely and honestly say that arts means jobs, right?
Yeah.
Arts and entertainment mean a lot of jobs out there. And, again, if we're talking about suppliers, we're talking about event places, we're talking about exhibit halls, all of that has been employing a lot of people. And that's one thing you can really say about America. And so, and I believe from everything I've noticed as far as the huge, subscriptions of these, whether it's the Netflix or anything else, people are still craving arts and entertainment. So we have an opportunity to, and by we, I mean all of you on this call, we have an opportunity to reframe this as, just practically part of being essential. This is, it's essential for us that we work, and it's essential for us that we play. We have got, it gives us hope in so many ways, and we have got to remember that in arts and entertainment as a job generator and a job keeper. And I've just had the privilege of sitting on that economic task force and on witnessing so much of what happened with the shutdown that I know that in my belly now, like never before. And, we're going to have to do the hard work of pointing out to people that part of our economy is getting arts and entertainment back up and running, because those dollars need to be moving through, or really Ohio's never going to make a full comeback. And so we just can't leave arts and entertainment out, and I don't intend to. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Representative. I think I've certainly been thinking about our downtowns and our restaurants and the places that that depend on arts and culture in order to make a living for themselves and their employees. So I know that the downtown restaurants certainly pay attention to when Akron Civic or EJ are having events. So I do want to ask a question from our group. What considerations have been made for smaller sites or museums? What do officials have on the national recommendations? What thoughts do officials have on the national recommendations for mandated face coverings in museums?
Okay, so I should know the answer to this, and I don't know it. But one of the things I want to say, again, part of in my life, I'm a cheerleader. I try to be enthusiastic, and I try to be encouraging. The work that you're doing is so valuable. But one thing I've noticed, just as a consumer, walking around, leaving my house, I feel very reluctant to go into businesses that don't seem to honor the mask. And so may I say to you, as you get ready to make your decisions, think about the most concern. And by the way, mom, grandma, hyper concerned about everyone's safety and about how they feel in every environment, just as far as safety, security, and so on. And so you're going to have to think like that when you think of, yes, it's a fun environment, and it's supposed to be good and enjoyable, and we're supposed to come away thoughtful and dreaming. But if I don't even feel comfortable coming into your space because I'm so upset about the lack of social distancing or the lack of masks or whatever, then that's really just going to kill everything you're trying to do. And so again, I want to work with everyone, and I look forward to finding out what guidelines. Like here, I'm just going to be very honest. We haven't really gotten a lot of national guidelines. We haven't gotten a lot of national leadership. And so again, in my whole rip off the Band-Aid approach to living, which makes some people not ask me back to a party, I'm just telling you that. It's just very realistic, people. So we're going to have to save ourselves.
Yeah.
Use good common sense, make good decisions based on how you would want to feel. And
Oh, Representative, I think you muted.
oh, I apologize.
No,
Yeah,
you're-
thank you. I did. I don't know why I did, but I did. So make good common sense decisions about how to make people feel welcome and comfortable in your spaces. And I want to encourage you, don't go with people who are not looking at the science. They are not making good business decisions for you if they're not looking at the science, because the virus is going to tell us when and how we can do everything, and you've got to be on the cutting edge of that. And so I just want to encourage you all to stay abreast of, look to the state government, if you will, for good decision making and good science decisions and thoughts about, obviously surfaces and what this virus is doing and how we can all, just be good stewards. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We have a question about the arts and culture industry has taken a significant hit, which you well know. What actions can and should be taken towards ensuring that arts organizations led by people of color can recover?
Well, here's some good news I can give you. I know some of what I've said is kind of a downer, but please go to the, it was Houston so Lieutenant Governor Houston made a comment I think it was just 3 days ago, but time is moving in strange ways.
I know.
But he just let us know about grant programs. And I believe he said they were for small businesses that were concentrating on women and people of color. The reason why I'm telling you that is because a lot of you are businesses, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so you may be eligible for this grant funding. I was so impressed with the way that the Akron Greater Chamber, the Chamber did their rollout of grants. They didn't just shoulder the burden, not just the county, but they also asked other entities to put in. Here's a sad truth. There are some people who are actually saving money right now. Some entities, some corporations, some grant making agencies. Do you know what I mean? Some corporations have a bunch of cash. There's no reason why they can't partner with arts and entertainment in some kind of a way to get you guys back and up on your feet. And we've got to think outside of the box, and we've got to think of ways, it benefits restaurants if you guys get up and running, just like you just said, right? So thinking of that, then we're going to have to think of different ways to partner with unusual entities so that we can encourage people. They already know it in their hearts how important arts and entertainment is, but they need to see it from a business point of view. And so even though it might sound like, well, we're not really a small business, or, maybe we're not eligible, I want to encourage you to look into those grants. They're able. And also I want to encourage you to start the discussion about creating those grants. You know your value. There's no reason why you can't be included in some of these. It's kind of be like a PPP for your specific group. There's been something like that done for the low wage earner restaurant worker. So all of these ideas, good ideas that we've seen around the country and within Ohio, let's model that into asking unusual partners for help and to partner with us. Just want to be encouraging.
Thank you. I do. We are all very grateful that the Chamber and the county took into account our artists in this last round of funding and allowed them to apply as sole entrepreneurs and sole proprietors. That is a big deal and much needed for folks who haven't been able to make money or have a gig since early March. So we really appreciate that.
Exactly. And if I could comment on that before we go to the next item is, some groups, because they have, they're kind of like me, technologically challenged and or challenged in their organizational skills.
You're doing okay, Representative.
Thank you. But part of what has happened is if I'm not an accountant, I don't necessarily know how to get all this stuff together in order to apply for a lot of these things. So that's one of the spaces where women and minorities and some small business and gig workers have been left out. So even though these wonderful programs have been created, we all need to be mindful that everyone wasn't able to access it. And so part of what I've been doing is continually pushing for the sole proprietors, the people who didn't get connected. Somebody needs to find out why they didn't and pull them in, because the answer can't be that they just closed. I mean, I know a lot of businesses are going to fail, but I hope the answer is not, well, they just needed $500 and the least amount we gave out as a grant was $1,000. And small tech challenges like that one, we're going to have to find a way to overcome it. So if you find out in all of your groups about some specific groups that were left out or that couldn't benefit and had to go do something different or whatever, I hope you'll let us know, because I intend to continue working in this space. And thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And yes, I think that's a wonderful call to action for our group, as if you come across and have specific situations, I'm happy to collect those for you, or you can always reach out to Bailey and to Representative Galonski directly. We have a question around accessibility. How can we make sure that people with disabilities can remain active in the arts community with the current situation? And will visual events be required to be ADA accessible?
See, this is another example of a huge area that we've all noticed. I was so grateful when Governor DeWine right away, I believe, started having interpreters there, people who could, sign for us. And that was great. But I've had other people reach out to me and say, and they are the disability community, the people that reached out to me and are educating me about the ways that they are left out of our economy, the ways that they are left out of arts and entertainment, the ways that they can't vote, and on and on and on. And so, again, while we're looking for good things in this pandemic, my eyes are open in a different way in answer to your question. So one of the things that I've done is we used to have advocacy days at the State House, which looked like this. The groups would come in, advocates would come into our offices and meet with us. Well, we're doing things differently, and we're doing Zoom calls. And so all that is to say to you, again, as arts and entertainment, business owners, entities, as the CEOs of these large groups, we've learned that there are different ways we can work, and we're going to have to learn that there are different ways that we can share the work we're doing. So this for just a small, tiny little note to you. This background that you're seeing is something I whipped up through a picture. So I can do that, and you can do what you need to do to make it accessible. We have never been forced to think so hard about these issues like we have now, and I think that's a good thing. And so I know I didn't really specifically answer that question, but I do want you to know that at least the thinking of it as a concern and a problem is now more than ever.
I think this has certainly brought some of our most vulnerable populations to the forefront of my mind, and I know we spoke about that last week as well. So as I'm looking down at the names of some of the people who are on here, I'm seeing names of large and small organizations of people who are thinking creatively about how they can continue to help some of our most vulnerable still access the arts and still feel connected. But we do have a long way to go on that front as well. So I encourage us to keep working, and we're certainly going to try to provide some support in that space in the days ahead as well. We have a question about how can our cultural organizations most effectively serve our communities during this time of COVID and racial anxiety?
Well,
what call to action might you give us?
I didn't hear the last part.
I just said, what call to action might you give us? How can we do better at serving our communities right now?
Well, this, again, not to be reductive or simplistic ever, but what we're doing right now, it makes me feel so much better to see faces, to talk to people, to hear from allies. Some of you on this call, actually, some of the names I'm seeing, you actually reached out to me, whether you wrote a letter or you sent me a text, or you picked up the phone and called me, and you said to me, I don't know what to do, but I want you to know that I'm thinking of you and I care. That has gone a long way. If I can just share one tiny example, today I was on a phone call with a group of 9-year-old girls from a school in California, an all-girls school in California, that wanted to do a Zoom call with me. And one of the questions the kids said was, do white people ever reach out to you to help you during this time? And I was so proud to say yes. You know, they were asking about basically the race culture question marks that we're in right now, specifically regarding the horrible death of George Floyd. And so these were just little kids that asked me that. And again, I was so proud to say to them that yes. And I think that went a long way, because there weren't just kids on that call. There were parents too, and teachers. And that made them think, like, it is important to check in with each other. It is important to see each other, even on Zoom. It is important to talk about what you're doing, talk about what I'm doing, be available for questions and answers. I think that way of communicating, even with people that we normally wouldn't be on the same side of an issue with, and maybe we're not on the same side now, we have got to do more of that, because only by doing that are we going to really be able to listen. One of the things that I love about Zoom as a long talker is when I stop talking and you start talking, I have to listen to you. And that's a tiny, tiny little way of making these conversations go better. Because, you know, we could be in a room and I could be over talking you, or you could be doing that to me. We're all made to listen in ways that we never did before. And I have got to believe that in this really difficult time, even that tiny little technological difference, I think, can help us all.
We have a question from one of our musicians who's asking, have there been any considerations for safe ways to perform together? As we're looking at reopening and our musicians want to get back out there and start earning, what considerations, or do you have musicians involved in a task force? Could we help connect you to some that would be helpful?
Look at that. We're going to start a task force after we're done here. And I'm really serious. Let's think about it, because you know more about what you need than I do. And unfortunately, many of you also who are in the chat room there, many of the names that I'm seeing, I tried to advocate for getting you to be heard by the Economic Recovery Task Force, and it fell on deaf ears. Well, you know what? We have a whole forum. We could have a task force ourselves, and we could do something where we talk about, you guys talk to me about what you need. So right now, when I hear guitar player, I'm assuming singing as well, but here's a question. Are you gonna now have plexiglass up if you're going to be singing and projecting? I don't know. Like what are the acoustics questions regarding what you might need to do differently? Are you going to be singing out at an audience anymore? Is that how we're going to do this? Are we going to do it all by Zoom? I love outdoor activities. Are we going to move everything outdoors? Are we going to do more amphitheaters? You know, I don't know the answer, but what I do know is on this call are really smart musicians, entertainers, arts people who can think outside of this box for us, and we can make it meaningful for everyone and also lucrative, because who are we kidding? We still need to stay in business, right? So let's do this. Let's find a way to get real answers to your questions. And you guys are probably going to have to think of this, you know, yourselves, but how are we going to do it? Again, my first thought is you can't sing in a mask. And, you know, is that a plexiglass because we can still see you and still have the experience, but then people aren't worried about it? Or is it the minute, what's the testing called, where I get a test and you know right then if I have COVID or not? Well, I don't even really believe in all of that, because we're finding out after the fact that a lot of those tests weren't exactly reliable. So we let's start thinking now about what all this is. But I noticed right away we had Lisa King weigh in. count the parks in. Are these our new partners to entertainment? I just left a food truck giving away masks, and people were giving away food, and we were all outdoors, still social distancing. But I think people felt comfortable walking up to that food truck because, you know, you have more of the safeguards in place. So let's keep thinking of, you know, is it mobile delivery of your work? I don't know, but let's keep the conversation going.
Representative, well, one, I can tell you, Lisa has contacted me about this exact subject and how the parks can play a role in safe performance. So I will take you up on that suggestion of a task force and pull some smart people together to provide support for you in the work that you're doing.
I love it. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you for being so open to that and suggesting it.
Sure.
We appreciate it. Doug, our friend from the zoo, has a question.
Okay.
And Representative, between the two of us, I think it is well established which one is having issues with technology. So.
Can you hear me, Nicole?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. Well, Representative, good to see you. At least this time I'm not chasing you down the hill over at Soapbox Derby.
Doug, that sounds very dramatic. Please do not do that to our elected officials. We need her.
I gave out a blood-curdling scream that people should go listen to just because it's a good time, and I just want to share that with you all. No one was harmed in the making of that little video clip.
It was great. But Representative, thank you for being with us today. I have a kind of a future-looking question here. With your role with the Economic Recovery Committee or Task Force, do you have any information that you might be able to share on this call that would be useful in business planning as we project what the rest of this pandemic is likely to look like? For example, I think most people believed that we were going to continue to see loss of jobs. Today, the job report looks a little better. That makes people feel a little better. But the reality is, the science says this is going to go on for 18 to 24 months, and then recovery will continue afterwards. And part of the maddening element of the closure was none of us had any direction about really what we needed to be looking at in the way of cost reductions and reserves and, you know, expectations of whether there might be one or two or more additional closures in our future. And I'm just curious if you could share anything that you're hearing that might help us figure out where the appropriate line for business planning is moving forward to protect all of our arts and culture venues from whatever may be coming next, being careful that none of us want to be scared of a monster around the corner kind of thing. But we do need real-time information about what, you know, our government believes their response would be if there's a spike in hospitalizations. You know, how might we be able to gauge in advance as we see the lines going up that perhaps we might want to dial back on some of our expenses again? To speak on behalf of the zoo, fortunately, I did not have to lay off my permanent year-round staff. We were able to keep them whole, thankfully, because of the PPP loan we received. But I have had to reduce 98 positions in a hiring freeze. So we're actually going to be reopening on the 14th, but 98 positions less than when we opened for our summer season last year, which means I'm putting alternative staff in the field to manage it. And I cannot bring any of those positions on until I really have a good feel for what the future is likely to look like, because once we spend the money, you're not getting it back. And so it's a real point of concern. And I know many of the people on this call share that concern, all at varying levels, depending on the size of the organization, but we're all experiencing the same thing. We know that if we actually spend more now and we get closed again in another key period of time, we know the federal government's not going to have money to keep supporting us. We know the state is already going through cuts and will have to do more. So I'm just wondering what sage advice you could provide to us based on what you've been exposed to. And I also realize I may be asking about the Holy Grail here. So there might not really be an answer because it is unprecedented. And, as a science-based organization, we can predict the science of this.
Sure.
It's the business side that there's no playbook for. So I'm just looking for any advice you may have.
So I never want to be a person who's making it up as I go along, but really full transparency here. That is how we are living. Now, a bit of good news. I have, again, say what you want about, governors around the country, but we are fortunate to have Governor DeWine and Amy Acton, because what I believe they've tried to do is they've tried to foreshadow some of the things that they are worried and concerned about. So when I listen to their press conferences, they help me to plan for the future as much as anybody can. So the good news is the economic task force that was started, and which frankly didn't really do what a lot of us were hoping, it's still around. And we still have a voice, and I'm not afraid, as you can see from just this call alone, I'm not afraid to call for the making of larger task force or more meaningful task force to help, to really actually help people. So what has happened is a dialogue has opened so that both the governor's office, so the administration, the Senate, and the House have been talking about kind of that future look. And I've heard people having conversations like, if we ever shut down again, should we do it in, what's the word, in regions instead of all of us, right? So the idea being that if we had more testing up online, and if we could do more testing, we would know what we don't know faster, and we would maybe be able to deal with hot zones. I'm not at all telling you that any of this is going to happen the way I'm mentioning it to you, but I'm telling you that because that could be a different way of you advocating. Let's say I own, a store, and I unfortunately have someone come in with COVID. We find out they're positive. What would I do? Well, here's what some stores have done. They've shut down, depending on the kind of store they were. I'm talking about maybe like a grocery store. They've shut down, done a huge deep cleaning, and opened back up. Wouldn't that be a better approach than shutting down completely? So what do you need to do to be prepared to do a quick shutdown like that and to reopen? I don't know. All of your businesses are different. But what I want to say to you is, let's model some of the good outcomes that we've witnessed, and some outcomes that have kept people working and in business. So some of the bad examples have been, there are some entities, which I'm going to try not to name, who have had people who test positive, and not related to science, but related to their need to have these workers back. They had people come back in like 3 or 7 days. I don't even know where that number came from, but you test positive for COVID, but you were back out working in 3 to 7 days. That doesn't follow any science that I'm aware of. And I just want to encourage you all that you can look at these businesses, which may not seem like they're at all like yours, but you can follow some best practices in preparing for your future. And so, again, as a prepper and a hoarder, these are also things I probably shouldn't overshare with, but there it is already out there. I'm both a prepper for life and a hoarder. I, in my own home, am making plans for a second and a third wave. So I'm not the crazy lady that's overbuying the toilet paper, but I'm doing what I like to call gentle buying in preparation for my home. And I'm doing that. I did that anyway, because again, coming from the flight attendant world, I believe in safety and security. So I'm naturally a little heightened, have a natural heightened concern over safety and security. I never really knew what that doomsday scenario would look like, but I did some prepping for it. So if you do that, or can do that in your business, not just related to this pandemic, but related to possible closing again, then I want you to do that. And don't be afraid to reach out to your government and say, what kind of prep are you doing for the possibility that I might have a downswing in my income? There are those conversations happening now, and I want to just be encouraging.
Thank you, Representative. We have a question that I'm doing. I have texts coming in and all
Yes,
sorts, so
of
I'm
course.
trying to keep up with all of the things here.
Yes.
A question from one of our artists there, and this is related to, we're so grateful that our artists are able to apply for unemployment. They have been, this artist is saying that she and her bandmates haven't been having significant issues getting a response to questions when they run into difficulty.
They are or are not having problems.
They are having difficulty. Would you have a recommendation on how they could speak to a person that would be able to
Yes.
assist them?
Yes. Again, just an unfortunate, or maybe fortunate truth that came out of this is the following. Again, Bailey Sandin, and not to sell her too much, but for whatever reason, this unemployment compensation nightmare has become her specialty. So the Ohio Democratic Caucus actually assigned her that this is her work now. So even though she's doing a million other things and is going to kill me on this call right now for saying this, she actually has put out at least, I think it's 4 weeks of missives. So each week she put out, like, it was about 6 pages, single space of information about how to navigate unemployment. And I would gladly give that to whoever the artist is who wants it. I can send all that to you so you can, she did it in headings. So you've got pandemic unemployment compensation, you've got nobody's calling me back, I never get to a live person, and you've even got, it keeps hanging up on me as I sit on the phone. I'd be happy to forward that to any of you. And if it's easier just to go to Rep 35 at ohiohouse.gov and request that, she'd be happy to send it to you. So you're going to get some big documents, but just wade through those headers and get an answer. And believe it or not, there are actual people there's a male and a female with first names that you can get live to help you based on which region you live in. So I guess they're separated 2 different regions, but you can get live help. And oh, I love that you just did that. Way to go. So
I had
hope
Bailey's email in there, and then I put
yeah. So Rep 35 at Ohio House, and you just want to put in there unemployment question. She has again done such a great job of being able to wade through those and get people quick answers. And although I don't hope that she becomes the person on the phone with you, she can get you the name of who can help. Okay.
That is, I cannot tell you how helpful that is for me,
great.
as I'm trying to provide support to artists across the sector, but also to those on this call. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Having a human makes a big difference in days like this.
It does, and somebody's saying
a whole new system. So.
Right, exactly. And so yeah, it just fell into our laps. Lucky that she was really great at that.
That's wonderful. I think we have one more question relative to assisting the sector coming back. There's a question around assistance and long-term support for arts and culture. How will this be addressed at the state level to ensure that arts and culture does not suffer unrecoverable losses?
So again, another question that I can't really, I'm not going to be able to give you an answer that satisfies you, but I want to be encouraging so that one of my legislator mentors in the Ohio House is Jack Serra, and if you don't know much about him, you should go look it up. He, however you feel about term limits, it's so helpful to have someone with the institutional knowledge that he has. He's our finance person, and what he immediately began, he serves on that economic task force with me, and he's been disappointed in what they've done. But what's been great is Jack has been very good with giving me information about what did we do in the 90s? What did we do in 2008? Is it like this recovery? No, it's a different recovery, but it's got some similarities. And what it makes me so encouraged, not to just have Jack as a friend, but to be a fellow legislator who I know I can pick up the phone and call him anytime, is he is constantly saying out loud, we're going to have to do this differently. We're going to have to look at a long-term solution for arts and culture. They were talking yesterday about how can we get the fairs open? It doesn't seem important, but they're important. The fairs are important for many reasons. And so I just want to say that to you so that yes, we're thinking about it, but I want to be very clear with you. Unless you all band together and do something to make yourselves heard as so important to the economics of Ohio, you're not going to be, you know, front and center. And so look at who's leading these task force. Look, like right now it's Paul Zeltwanger. He's an approachable guy, but he's not from our area. So if you guys have any kind of contacts that are in, you know, maybe in his area, to try to get to him as a way to put your issue on the front burner, I want to encourage you to do that. I've done what I can, and I'm almost ready to start, you know, a whole other task force or some other way of letting people be heard, because what I don't want to happen is I don't want the legislature to decide this for you, because a lot of us are not artists and we don't have any idea about the arts world, arts and entertainment, you know, and that's not going to serve you very well. So I want you, you know, I'm not trying to scare anybody on the phone or on the Zoom call, but I want you to know that you have allies, but you know, you're not central in the thinking about this the way that you should be. And so you're going to need to, you know, to really beef up your advocacy, you know, somehow make your situation be known. And my personal thought is you're going to always be plugging in those billions of dollars in money that you generate every year for Ohioans.
Thank you, Representative. I think I want to be respectful of time. We have one more question, and then I'd like to give you the opportunity to share any closing thoughts or any work that you would like us to do that might be helpful to you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The last question is, will museum events be held to the same guidelines as banquet halls?
Wow. Again, I haven't had a Zoom call where I'm so incapable of answering questions.
No, these are very specific questions we're asking.
Yeah. And here's what I know. I know that the way, again, if we look to the leadership of the governor and we look at the good things that have come out legislatively so far, they tend to be science oriented. So if I use that same model, we're not eating in a museum hall. We're doing something different, right? So a banquet hall and eating and not having your mask on 100% of the time is going to be a little different. I encourage anybody on this call who knows something about me enjoying a museum and how I can do that differently, but in person, you better get on the front lines of getting that information to anybody who needs to be listening, whether it's the Arts Council or however you connect with allies, and let them know your thoughts about how that can be done. I feel excited about being able to enjoy a museum, socially distancing, one-way patterns of running things and so on, encouraging people with hand washing stations and sanitizer stations. And I can see doing that in a different way. I was one of the groups, if it helps, one of the groups that was on our economic recovery task force was COSI. Mm-hmm. They had a lot of great ideas about reopening, their plans and thoughts, but they also mentioned that they intend to continue doing some things virtually. And I thought it was still a workable business model. So I just want to be encouraging.
Thank you, Representative. I always like to give myself assignments. I'm a recovering teacher, so I'm.
Oh yeah.
So I think what I'm going to do is one, reach out to Angela Maleka again at Ohio Citizens for the Arts,
Yes.
And see if there are already task forces for performers and musicians, and if not, raise Summit County's hand to step into that space or to join existing efforts. So I will make sure that I do that. I would also encourage anyone on the call, if you didn't provide information or resources that could be helpful to the representative in your registration, please send me an email. I'm happy to consolidate all of that and send it over to the representative and to Bailey, because it is, you know, at the end of this call, I certainly feel the weight of our need both to advocate for ourselves, but also to be resources for our legislature. So please send me anything that you think would be helpful, so that we can provide that so that she has what she needs. Representative, any closing thoughts? I want to thank you again and give you a chance to share.
You are welcome. And I want to thank you because really, I, as a public servant and as someone who works for you, being given this opportunity to, again, the very important people who are on this call, that is really, it's my honor. And the other thing I want to say to you is, I'm a person of action steps. One of the action steps I want everyone on this call to consider is Summit County, or at least the 35th district, and maybe we need to make it countywide. Let's think of an arts and entertainment resource. And I don't want to say the word manual, but is it going to be just a little, is it a little something? Because I could push that out through my newsletter to let people know that, you know, arts and entertainment are alive and working, because, and they're open, you know, and they're going to be open. And so some kind of a rollout like that, I don't know if it would be a one-time thing, but that's one of the things that my office could offer you. Is it's not uncommon for a legislator to do kind of a resource manual about businesses in their area. I mean, you got probably some smart young folks. You're a smart young person on the line here.
Well,
who
thank
could
you.
probably pull that together. And wouldn't it be a benefit to all? And we could just keep publicizing it to people, letting them know your different hours, your new opening time, your new closing times. If we end up with a closing, we could start, you know, some kind of a website or some kind of a way to get the information out to people, or to connect websites. Let's think about it, okay? Because I want to be a part of it, but I don't want to duplicate work if it's already being done. So thank you. And thank you all for being here. It just really warms my heart that something so important to me has become, you know, a live thing that we're doing here. And by the way, happy to do it again. You see, I'm a long talker, so maybe we need to provide more time next time. But
No,
I'm totally willing.
I so appreciate you taking time to do this and to be with us today, and both to share your passion for the arts, and your service to Ohio Arts Council means so much. But it's certainly a point of pride for all of us that you're speaking for us in the ways that you are. So we really appreciate you, Representative.
Thank you for that. Thank you to everybody. If I didn't get to see you or wave at you, I'm doing it now. Everybody have a great day and stay safe out there.
Thank you so much. You too. Everyone, thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.